Jacki Miller, MBF Bulldogges. First of all, big salute for your recent registration.
Thank you.
Super excited about that. Got some old Boston Bulldogs officially on the site now, and we're just going to try to do our part to help push that breed in the right direction. At least do our part. I know it's, takes a village, but do what we can. While we're on that topic, though, one thing you've mentioned before, especially because this is such a young breed, is there's already, surprisingly, so many misconceptions. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, the big thing, I touched a little bit on this in the past, but it's just that majority of people don't know what the breed is. People see the dogs, they say, oh, it's a pit bull mix, or, oh, it's a Boston Terrier mix, or they confuse it with other breeds all the time. So obviously, I'm trying to get that to change, get a little more consistency within the look of this breed, because it's all over the place right now, and people are kind of not really taking it seriously. The people who do know this breed, a lot of game dog guys that I know, they kind of think it's laughable because they see it's just very inconsistent, and they only know the breed based off of a few dogs that they've seen, and they weren't fans of it. Obviously, they don't know the depth that it can go, and I'm trying to show that the work that I'm putting into them, I'm not just breeding random dogs and throwing random stuff together. I'm really putting a lot of thought into what I'm doing, and I don't want to breed flaws. I don't want to breed dogs that have messed up issues, whether it be structurally or temperament. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to keep them as close to what they originally were as possible. I'm really trying to stick to it. I'm like fighting to get a real breed standard set for this dog, and where we can get it to the point where, yes, there will be ones competing in shows, and there will be, confirmation shows where they're, going by a standard and whatnot. And then that could probably lead us into the other topic we're going to talk about, too, about show versus working, and et cetera, et cetera. Because I'm not trying to lose the working ability either. Obviously, my dogs can work. Yes, people are all about social media these days, and that's a big thing that I'm getting flack for, which is just starting to drive me a little nuts, because I don't post stuff like that. Like you're lucky you get what you get. Mm-hmm. I'm not posting pictures of dead animals. I'm not posting pictures of anything like that. On top of that, I don't really have time to sit there and grab my phone and start recording every little things my dogs do. So, mm-hmm. You're not going to see it blasted all over social media, what kind of work my dogs do, but by all means, come over and see for yourself,
Yeah.
So I'm going to keep that working ability. I'm going to keep them as close to game dogs as possible for what they used to be, what this breed is a recreation of. Mm. And I want them to go into the show aspect as well. So I'm just hearing all kinds of things that people aren't really taking it seriously, because they see a few things that they don't like, and I'm like, hey, listen, just look at what I do, Mm-hmm. I'm trying to fix that, and I'm trying to get their more consistency here. So, mm-hmm. That's a big thing. There's a lot of people that just, they don't know what it is, and when the people who do, they don't like what they've seen previously, and I'm trying to change that. So right. That's definitely a big part.
Now, when it comes to like working versus show versus pet, are we talking about the aspect of quality? Like, for example, if you get one out of a litter that just ain't gonna work out as a working dog, would you still want that dog to be in a pet home and still be referred to as an old Boston Bulldog, or are you talking going more stringent than that?
Yeah, the breed is the breed, whether you have good ones or ones that didn't turn out as good as you wanted. It's still going to be its breed. But there's a lot of talk about how dogs were originally created with a purpose. There was always some kind of working aspect in most dog breeds, and as things progressed and people started breeding more for show, more for this and that, they lost the working ability, which I understand that, but it's not as cut and dry, because I will sit here and bash AKC all day for ruining so many breeds. Looking at the German Shepherd now is standing in an AKC show ring versus what it used to look like when it was a working dog. I will sit there and agree with that all day. But at the same time, then you got guys that are very, very set on working and don't care about looks, but then their dogs have splayed feet and, they're bow-legged and all kinds of issues, and then they say, oh yeah, but my dog will champ out in the box, like stuff like that. You could do both, You could do both, and that's just, we're just talking, bull and terrier type breeds right now, but this goes for most breeds. You can do both. You can breed dogs to a standard, a nice, healthy standard, mind you, because I know some of the problems are in the standards for some breeds, but that's why I'm trying to keep in mind while I'm coming up with a new standard for this breed, something that will keep the standard a healthy dog. Healthy, functional, and not start going the direction of the English Bulldog or something like that.
Right.
It won't do that, and I'm not allowing it, You can do both, I'm breeding dogs that I'm making sure they don't have splayed feet. I'm making sure their pasterns are strong. I'm making sure that they have nice, even top lines or a slight roach, which, a slight roach back definitely helps with that terrier spring that they should have. All these things that you want to look for structurally, they're supposed to help the performance of the dog. Now, if you can have some minor flaws in a dog that, maybe, okay, you know what, maybe I'll give this dog a try. This dog does still perform, even though it's got this one little issue. Then you breed that dog, and you see how those pups turned out. Now, if the pups all turned out fine, then you say, all right, you know what, that was one of those ones where you could just let it slide because it still worked out good. But if the pups all start showing those same signs, like they got those issues too, or sometimes it could be even worse, I've seen it happen, then you don't want to breed that dog no more, Then it's like, all right, that dog gets cut from the breeding program because you don't want to produce flaws. So, I give them a try. If I see flaws, I have to know that the flaws are A, not too extreme, and B, not too many flaws. If it's flaws that I can get past, I'll give that dog a chance, and see what it produces.
Right.
But if it still don't work out good, then the dog gets scratched from the program. I want the dogs to be able to perform, be healthy, and still show a nice conformation, nice structure, where they can step into a show ring still. And they can do well like that. I can't wait for the day that we can do some kind of a show, and I bring one of my old Bostons in for a confirmation show, and people will really see, how well I've put into keeping these dogs structurally sound and conditioned nicely. Granted, I could put more time into conditioning, but if you could see in my pictures, you could tell my dogs are definitely pretty well conditioned, So I put in enough work to where you see it. You definitely see it.
Right.
And,
well,
you could definitely do both. Like I said, that's the big thing. You can do both. You can maintain a good working dog.
Right.
And still have a dog that's show quality.
Excuse me, sorry. Yeah, you and a few others, Joe Church, a few people have been talking about wanting to put something together, some kind of event, and I'd really like to. I just, like I said when we were talking about it before, I just don't even know where the hell to start. probably
Well,
figure
and
out.
one of my notebooks that's just loaded with dog, documentation, me drawing up pedigrees, all that stuff that I have just a bunch of doodles in there. I wrote down a whole bunch of things like where we could get started and all the things that we would need to do the show and like,
Okay.
vendors, this and that. So I don't know if you
Yeah.
want to go through it some more. Maybe even one of these days get a, like a 4-way chat with all of us together so we can all put some ideas together.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Because that would be really cool. What I wanted to ask is when you're talking about basically scratching a stud or a bitch from a program, not using them to breed anymore. About when do you know that that dog is not, well, let's say not even a good dog, but when you said, like, for example, you'll give a certain flaw a pass considering what they produce. If they don't produce, many puppies with that same flaw, continue to let them breed. But about when do you know, like, oh no, he's throwing this, like this is just a genetic that he has to go, or this is going to continue. Like what time frame?
I mean, my rule of thumb, if it's the first litter, if it's one litter that dog produces and then I see that litter, full grown and I'm not liking how they turn out, I should scratch the dog then and there. But I've given other dogs, second chance after that because I was unsure whether or not it was the male or the female. And, I thought maybe try it with a completely different bred male to go to that female or whatever, and then go from there. So I try to have like a rule with it, but sometimes I did make a few other exceptions based on not knowing where it came from.
Okay.
But that was also kind of tying into mixing bloodlines because I knew what I was working with when I had all my own dogs that I produced, but then bringing outside blood in, that's when I was like unsure what was coming from where.
Yeah. How long did it take from when you started off with your initial stock to now before you actually started to, like, pull some of the weeds? Like, when did it start to become like your dog, what you were ideally looking for?
I mean, I'm not going to consider what I have now to be perfect right now either. I like some of what I got going on now, but I still want to make some tweaks. There's still always room for improvement. So, I was willing to make improvements, in the very beginning. But I knew that I still had to put a few more generations into it. But I'd say I'm really, really cracking down more so now, like in the past year or two. Like I experimented a little bit, and then my basically my whole look of my dogs varies so much now that I want to tighten it down again. So now I'm cracking down, getting more strict with it.
Does the look vary as much as their working ability, or are they all pretty much the same when it comes to work?
Yeah, the look definitely doesn't make a difference because, I mean, even my very first start, many, many years ago when I had they were very high percentage of just Boston Terrier. And they looked more Boston Terrier than anything. And those dogs, they were still very good, had very good ability, very good drive. So the look definitely don't matter in that department. My thing that I want to work on is nerves. So, a dog that is a little nervy, can be like maybe a little fearful or timid around people, stuff like that I just started recently noticing in some of them. And, some of them can still work really good, even being nervy, but a lot of times nerve can interfere with the drive of the dog because they get distracted, they shy away. So I don't want that, so I seen some of that popping up, and I know that's something that is also a misconception within the breed is the bad nerves. So I definitely am trying to change that as well.
Okay.
That's really the only thing that I feel interferes The looks definitely really don't matter. I mean, a 30-pound, very Boston-y looking dog with a shorter muzzle and a more of an underbite is going to work the same for me as a 50-pound, more pit bull looking one.
Mm-hmm. Now let's touch on veterinary care, because this is a big one. I've been talking about this a lot. And I'll start it off by saying I noticed that, you know, a lot of people feed raw, a lot of people feed kibble. I like both, but I thought it was funny that certain veterinarians like will advise so strongly against the raw diet, and I personally believe it's only to push their own brands and their own medicine and their own dog foods.
Yeah, I totally agree there. I literally just seen something. I'm a member of a veterinarian group on Facebook, and someone was asking the vets for help because their dog got a hold of some raw chicken breast that they had thawing out on the counter. They said no bones, nothing like that, but he ate a whole 2-pound pack of chicken, and I'm worried about him. And the vets were like, just monitor him, and if he has diarrhea or this and that, you know, then other ones were recommending to bring him into the ER.
Yeah.
I'm like, these are vets. You guys are supposed to be the ones that, you know, are all for doing what's best for the animal. You're supposed to be the ones that know these things. And it was laughable to me. I'm like, I wanted to message this person and say, your dog's fine. If anything, your dog's going to have a nice bout of energy because he ate something really good. You know, like, raw diet obviously is what they're made for. They're naturally carnivores, and they can naturally eat bones. You know, that's another misconception about the raw diet, because people think they can't eat the bones, they'll choke on the bones. No, they just can't eat cooked or smoked bones.
Right.
Raw bones, absolutely. Look at what wolves do in a documentary. They're picking that carcass clean. They're eating the ribs right off of it. They can eat the bones. So, you know, I'm all for raw diet, and anybody who shuns that, I think, is completely uneducated, or, yes, just trying to push to make money on some other expensive brand of dog food.
Right.
Now, I feed kibble, too, so, you know, so what, you know? Like,
Right.
I mix and match. I do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. No biggie. But the misconceptions with the vets, they push so many things that they don't need to be pushing. You know, a lot of it, like, the whole world, so everything's a money-making scheme.
Yeah.
You know, just like the people who, you know, a young woman goes to a mechanic and says, you know, my car's making a funny noise. And, you know, the mechanic happens to find that she had a little piece of her fender that was, you know, broken and sticking out and flapping while she was driving, and that was the problem. And it would have been a, you know, real quick, real cheap fix. But the mechanic says, yeah, it's your engine that's knocking. You know, you need to replace the engine. You know, $2,500.
Yeah.
You know, and that's if you're lucky.
Right.
You know, like, they take advantage because people don't know any. Some people who aren't educated in these things and they don't know any better, they're not going to question the quote unquote expert.
Right.
You know, so they can get away with it, and people most of the time they don't want to question it either. They're just like, here, you know, take the money and just do it and take care of it, and I'll be on my way. But, you know, like, as far as, let's say, vaccines, they pushed so many. You know, I heard things about you need this set, that set, this set, that set. Then you need boosters for each and every single one. Like, no, you really don't. I have people that I know that don't vax their dogs at all.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I wouldn't do that because I'm still too worried about things like parvo.
Right.
But I'm all for just the 5-way shot, one and done. And then I'll give them the rabies shot at a year old.
Yeah, that's
and then, you know, again, a couple years later. But
that's it. That's all.
Yeah,
I do.
that's really all they need. You know, and I tell the new buyers when they take puppies from me, I say, listen, if you want to, you can get another round of shots, but you don't need to. Don't let the vets push it. I give you all the health documents. It shows the proof, you know, of the vaccine they were given and the date that they were given it.
Yeah.
What it covers and everything like that. You have that. So, you know, that's something you can always show your vets if you need proof of, you know, their veterinary care. But you don't need to have them pushing more on you. If you don't want to, you don't have to. You know,
And I'll
like
be
all they
honest
need
too,
after
like,
this, when they go home to their new homes, they'll need their rabies shot. And I say a minimum of 15 weeks for that, but I like to push it to at least 6 months. Sometimes my own dogs, I'll wait till a year old before I give them that one.
right, but I mean, like, honestly, that's all I'll do. When I have a litter of pups, I'll give the mom a 7-way shot after she has the pups, and then give the pups each a 5-way shot when they're almost 8 weeks old. And then, me personally, hell, there's dogs that I didn't even get a rabies vaccination for. I just didn't see the need, like, especially if it was just a house dog that I wasn't out in the woods working with or something. It's
Hmm.
like I didn't even see the need for it.
Yeah,
I've
and
never
rabies
seen.
is really, it's so minute at this point. You
Yeah,
know,
it's
like I
so
hear the
rare.
numbers have gone so low that it's especially in certain areas, like, you know, in very urban areas. I know around here where I live, the numbers are really low.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I would say unless you're out in the woods a lot, very frequently, and you're hunting actively, you know, you probably don't even need the rabies shot either.
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but
Everything is
my main thing is parvo. I definitely don't want to take no chance. I've never seen parvo in my program. It's never happened to me personally. Knock on wood, and I just want to keep it that way.
Yeah, parvo is nasty, man. I lost a couple dogs to parvo back in the day. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it did happen to a breeder I knew a long time ago, and thank God, like, I just grazed through without it affecting, you know, me and my dogs at the time.
mm, yeah, that's some scary shit. Well, let me ask you this first because I'm still just learning about the Old Boston. Was there ever a breed standard written?
I think there was with the IOEBA. I vaguely read it, and I shouldn't have said it vaguely because the word I can use to describe it is vague. It's very vague.
Mm,
Um, and then also same thing when I believe actually it was in your interview with Nathaniel Rutan, he had said, you know, a few things like a height and weight requirement. And he said, you know, no height requirements, no height standards.
mm-hmm,
So, you know, like basically in a nutshell, there is a sort of standard, I guess you could say, but it's very vague, and the one with the IOEBA seemed more along the lines of just the Boston Terrier look.
mm-hmm.
They basically just looked like slightly bigger Boston Terriers. The only thing, as far as I know, the only old Boston Bulldogs that were ever registered with them were through a kennel that is no longer even in business.
Mm,
So, I don't know.
I
That's
got
why I would like to get a more set standard, you know, much more descriptive, much more detailed, you know,
you. Mm-hmm.
good set standard.
Yeah, I believe you sent me the standard once already. I haven't been able to really dive into it, but it
That's
would.
all right. I've tweaked it a few times since then, too.
It's one of those things, man. No, I totally get it.
Yeah.
Um, but I would like to. That would actually be. I was talking to Andre about maybe doing a standard for the American Pit Bull Terrier, um, in his own words for the pit bull aspect of things. But nobody else has really brought forth any standards for the club yet. Right now, we're just like-minded and have the same kind of interests in mind. Um,
Hmm.
but I would like to get that standard up there. Once you, no pressure, like just once you feel it's ready, and keep bouncing it off me because once I, get a minute here, I could take a look through it. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's pretty exciting stuff, man. This is growing pretty at a pretty good speed. I didn't want it to grow too fast because I don't want it to end up like other clubs that we won't bring up. Um,
But yeah, I mean that's the whole thing too, and that's why I ultimately went with the decision to register with you because we're not going to go that direction. You know,
right,
we can do everything we want to do and keep it from getting out of control. You know,
right.
even if it does get really big, you know,
Yeah, but even
you
if it
could.
gets even if it gets like really big, I still want it to be small enough where everybody has access to everybody. You know, like,
Gotcha.
because it's like, why is the UKC or the AKC or even the ADBA, even though I respect, you know, their history and everything, it's just like, but why do they call themselves a club? It's not like one member could get a hold of every other member and be like, well, hey, you know, I found this weird rash on my dog, you know, and you know, I want everybody to be like, oh, send pics. And then, you know, within a few phone calls, the dude solved his problem. Like, that's kind of what I was aiming for, was an actual community.
Yeah, and you did good with that on making the Facebook group, you know, so that way
Yeah.
everybody can be all in contact with each other there.
Yeah, that's a start. I do want to think more about, like, getting a first event together and just kind of getting as many people that are registered out there as possible. I don't know. There's a lot to be discussed.
Yeah.
But the future looks bright. But there's a lot of details to hammer out.
Well, count me in. I'm down to help.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I love these conversations. I don't even care that this is on the interview. I want people to know exactly what I'm doing, so the haters could watch from afar and just, you know, get sick to their stomach if they want. You know? Yep, this is exactly. Well, you can't just start a kennel club. Well, looks like I did it. Looks like I'm doing it.
I know. I'm probably gonna get flagged too for things that I said. You know, especially with coming up with a new breed standard for the old Boston Bulldog. You know.
Oh yeah, because who the
I
hell
know.
are you?
You know, it's not one person's breed. It's not, you know, just confined to one group on Facebook. It's you want a dog breed, you know, then other breeders can breed their own bloodlines and, you know, take it in a different direction even,
Right.
or, you know, expand it more. You know, and it
Yeah.
needs recognition.
Yeah, and I think as long as it's going in the right direction, I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, I think standards are good, but I think people get way too hung up on it. When especially the sticklers, they talk about that's not a this or that's not a that. And you, like you're doing band dog breedings, especially, like people say, like they try to act like kind of like, who do you think you are to do that? And it's just like, well, I'm feeding the bastards. I'll do what I want with them. Like,
That's what the Boston Terrier people act towards me. You know, like there's no such thing as an old Boston Bulldog. And you know what? Now that I literally just remembered what else I wanted to say about as far as misconceptions on the breed. The name is Old Boston Bulldog, but it's technically not a bulldog. You know, it's a bull and terrier. You know, the history goes when the fighting bulldog types and the terrier types started being combined to make that ultimate game dog, where you get the best traits from both dogs. You know, that's where pit bulls came from. That's where a lot of them, bull terriers, you know, Boston Terriers, they all shared that same early history. And they're all bull and terriers. They're bulldog and terrier crosses. So when you hear somebody call a pit bull a bulldog, because a lot of dog men do that, they call them bulldogs. They say, you know, those are my bulldogs, but they're pit bulls. You know, they're still bull and terriers. And people hear old Boston Bulldog, they think it's a bulldog. Then they look at it and be like, that ain't no bulldog. You know, like it looks like a pit bull. You know, I got to explain that to everybody. So, you know, people also need to understand that just because the name says bulldog doesn't mean it's an English bulldog, you know?
yeah, I mean, I still call pit bulls bulldogs. And in fact, I think when people got them so freaking sloppy, I think they changed the image in people's mind of what bulldog is supposed to look like.
Yeah, I have to get into that with people quite often. Even it's crazy because the AKC Boston Terrier nuts are the ones that give a lot of shit about it. And, you know, meanwhile, they're breeding ones that are overdone now at this point. You know, your Boston Terriers are suffering badly from, or they have breathing problems and all this other stuff. Their nares are pinched. Their eyes are bulging.
Yeah.
They're nervous little wrecks. You know, like, do you even know the history on your own breed? Pull up pictures of a Boston Terrier from, I don't know, late 1800s. And compare.
Well, I
Even
mean,
early 1900s,
when
go
you
to
look at the
1920, 1930, they don't look nothing like that.
right, and when you, I mean, even look back at the old paintings of what old bulldogs used to look like. I mean, some of them might have had a bit of a smash face here and there, but other than that, they still had a really athletic looking body, and like they could move. They weren't.
Yeah.
People today consider, they hear the word bulldog and they think of fat, chunky dog, or a dog that's overly stocky. I don't think historically that's accurate. That's an accurate image.
Yeah. And that's what we're trying to change, trying to educate people on this stuff.
Yeah.
I will not allow my breed to start becoming, flat-faced, pinched nares, breathing problems, and all that stuff. Whether it be more the Bulldog way or the way Boston Terriers today are. I mean, granted, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to knock Boston Terriers because I absolutely love them. There are working Boston Terriers out there, purebred, that, are very well bred. And they definitely have a little more muzzle to them, and they have a lot of ability still. And I actually have spoken to quite a few people who have a few that want to, start up their own little program with bringing back some older styled, healthy Boston Terriers, and they're waiting on the right chance to obtain some stock from me to put it in with their smaller dogs that they have. So I'm all for it. I'm encouraging it. I want to see more people get involved with doing this and breeding for a healthier dog.
Well, I think
we need more strict breeders out there like this, And H. Lee Robinson, I got to give him a little shout because I just was listening to your interviews with him, and I didn't know who he was beforehand, but I'm a fan. I was like, oh man, that sounds just like me, with so many things that he was saying in there, and he sounds like a very, very educated, very knowledgeable guy, and he seems like he's doing very good with what he's doing, and I'm really liking what I'm hearing from him and what I'm seeing from him, and I just feel like I was relating a lot, so I'm like, we need more people like that out there.
Absolutely.
So we definitely do.
Yeah. No, Lee has been a great friend of mine, and we just constantly go out of each other's way to, constantly go out of our way to help one another, just because it's just all around good people, I plan on getting a dog from him. I'm actually aiming for kind of the beginning of this coming year to finally get a dog from him. So we're trying to figure it out, but life is crazy, so we'll see if we get it all pinned down and I can make my way out there. But I'm such a dog nerd that I've learned from so many different sources. But when it comes down to the the hardcore facts about breeding and animal behavior, specifically canine, a lot of what I've learned has come from him and his content and just phone conversations. Anytime I had an issue, I'd hit him up, and there is definitely a few others, but Lee has always been like on the front line.
Yeah, for sure. That's the kind of breeder you want to learn from. And that's, actually taking me back to something that we talked about in one of our previous interviews. What I would say to people that are new to the old Boston Bulldog, looking to start out and start breeding them, that's another big thing, is a lot of people pick the wrong person as a mentor. Mm-hmm. They pick the wrong person who doesn't really have enough knowledge. And just because someone's been doing it for a very long time doesn't necessarily mean they're also very knowledgeable or doing things, the appropriate or ethical way. Mm-hmm. You got to really research the breeder that you're going to work with. You got to really research who you want to learn things from, and then you go from there. And you continue on your conversation. You gotta have an open mind. You gotta listen, and not be stubborn, or, a lot of people that you try to talk to and educate, even when simple things on Facebook, like someone calling Dark Dynasty Canines Hulk, that dog, we all know that dog. And when someone's on post saying world's biggest pit bull, and you go on there and you say, well, it's not a pit bull,
right.
Instead of someone being so stubborn and lashing out and fighting with somebody because they said something. Maybe actually be more open-minded and listen, okay, well, maybe this person has a reason why they say that. Have a conversation with them. Listen to the facts. And then, from there, in that conversation, obviously, I can provide the facts and explain it and show proof. And then, the person can choose to listen or not.
Before we wrap up, I gotta bug you about it because I always do. What's up with the reptiles, man?
Well, I mean, I said I'm probably not going to be getting back into reptiles again for quite some time. So, and even my buddy I was telling you about that, that he had all my snakes at his place, he's doing away with it too for now. So, yeah, no snakes for a while. It's going to be a long time before we get back into it again. Yeah.
I don't know. Well, let me ask you this, because I still daydream about it here and there. I mean, to the people that want to get into reptiles, and there's some people that can, and some people that can't, some people that want to do it for the wrong reasons. When it comes to the reptile thing, do you think it's even possible to really do it like a business, or do you think it's kind of a little too saturated for that by now?
I mean, the reason why I kind of got at it, one of the reasons was because there was a little bit of issues within the community. It was, I'm probably just mainly because of the economy, taking a shit, but, other than that, yeah, it is really good business to be in, but you got to really be in it for the long haul because you're not going to be making crazy sales or selling high-end snakes right from the jump. You definitely got to put in the time. I mean, at the very least, you got to be 4 years in before you even have a female that's ready to breed. You get a breeding pair as babies. You got to give them a few years to grow. A female boa constrictor, at least 4 years old before she's ready to breed. So you got to have a lot of patience for sure. But in the long run, yes. I mean, some of the people that I was doing business with, I mean, they had snakes that were selling for $10,000-$20,000. It's possible. It definitely is. But the economy right now just really sucks. So I think it's hit a bad spot for the last couple of years. But I think it'll probably take off again because it's still a very huge community. Not just with the snakes I dealt with, the boas and the ball pythons, but I mean, just those alone are huge. Then you got, the colubrids, corn snakes and milk snakes, stuff like that. You got the venoms, like, there's people obviously in certain states where they are illegal because they're not here, and I don't have venomous stuff. But people breed venomous snakes. The nickname for them is hots. That's what they call them. There's also reticulated pythons, which that's another one that's a huge, very popular, lots of different variations and morphs and whatnot. And you have different lizards, crested geckos, leopard geckos, tegus, so it's a huge, huge community. You go to one reptile expo in your local area, and it's usually a very large facility that is jam-packed, shoulder to shoulder, where you can literally feel the sweat from the people around you getting on you. It's
Wow.
jam-packed with people. So
Yeah,
it's,
I mean,
it's a huge community, and it's awesome. It's an awesome community. Obviously, just like any other business, there's going to be bad eggs. There's always bad eggs everywhere you go, and no matter what hobby it is. But overall, it's a very, very cool community, and I do miss it dearly right now. I want to get back into it, but I got the snakes because I always wanted snakes growing up, and I was never allowed to have them. And when I moved out and was living on my own, I wasn't allowed to have dogs, so I had to sacrifice the dogs. But I was able to get the snakes at that point, so then I started building my collection there. Then once I started, getting, into a bigger house and being able to get dogs again, my dog numbers started going up. Then, I was like, all right, now I got to choose, because I can't do both. I'm focusing more on the dogs now. I'm getting back to where I want to be with the dogs, the snakes, the economy, trying to find a good supplier for feeders. That was like really getting difficult at the time. So I wasn't really selling much with them. And then, of course, like with snakes too, they can get any kind of sickness. They can get pretty much everything a human can get. And sometimes you never see it coming, and you just wake up one day and your snake's dead.
Right.
So a lot of times that will happen. I had a few losses during that time frame as well. So it gets discouraging sometimes. But between all those different factors, that's when I made the decision to do away with the snakes for a while and focus on the dogs.